friends. I wanted to hop on today and quickly share some of my reading list. A few of you have asked me in private message what books have been transformative or important for me in my own path. And so I wanted to hop on really quickly and give you a quick snapshot of just a few of them that I think are really fantastic. So the first one is The Power of Myth. Now this was actually an interview between Joseph Campbell and Bill Moyers, I think back in the 80s. Not 100% sure on timing. However, you can also find it as a DVD. It's a fascinating set of interviews between the two of them. Joseph Campbell, for those who are unacquainted, was a comparative mythologist who went back through all the great world religions, all the great world myths and stories, and ultimately discovered that there is one general arc that ties all these great stories together, which he called the hero's journey. And it's just a really fascinating deep dive into how all of our myths, all the stories that human beings have passed down through time, are all trying to help us overcome our own inward obstacles. And kind of, I'll just keep going. But Power of Myth, it's a great one. Second one, the Tao Te Ching. This is obviously a classic that has been around for a very long time, but it is just filled with timeless wisdom that I'm not even going to try and read it still because it's so good on its own. So I recommend the Stephen Mitchell translation for those who are curious. The next one, let's go with Waking Up by Sam Harris. Sorry, I hate dust covers, so I usually throw them off. But this is a great book. Sam Harris, I believe his background is he's a neuroscientist or has some background in neuroscience, but he really brings a very pragmatic Western view into mindfulness, consciousness, meditation, and all the various contemplative traditions and wisdom traditions that are out there. So if you are a Westerner who really wants a pragmatic approach to mindfulness and kind of understanding Buddhism, Taoism, and other contemplative traditions, I would say this would be a great book to start with. All right, moving on here. The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But this is another classic. I would put it right up there with the Tao Te Ching. The book is kind of organized. It's really poetry, but it's organized by topics like love, marriage, children, giving, work, joy and sorrow. And he's just a master wordsmith. And I'd highly recommend it for those that are maybe looking for something a bit more poetic and a little bit less rational, maybe. Let's see here. Krishnamurti, Think on These Things. Now, this book was a biggie for me. I had just never found a teacher quite like Krishnamurti. He's so, how do you even describe him? He just thinks in a completely different way. Compared to most people that are kind of stuck in the mind, this guy can really pull out like a 30,000-foot view and look at the mind and observe the way it acts and behaves, how it responds to stimulus, how it responds to setbacks, suffering, etc. And he's just so precise with his language. It's really impressive. So I would say Krishnamurti would be great for those that have maybe already dove into the world of mindfulness and meditation, but are looking for maybe a little more intellectual firepower to kind of help them get through some obstacles within their practice. So that's Krishnamurti, and he's got tons of books, but Think on These Things is my personal favorite. Let's see here. All right, for all you psychedelics fans out there, not endorsing that, but you guys know where I'm coming from. Terence McKenna is by far my favorite psychedelic author. Beyond talking at length about the benefits of psychedelics and their place within human society and culture. He finds a way to weave it all together to help us kind of understand why transformations of consciousness, why new ways of looking at the challenges of our society and our culture sometimes require us to step outside the norm, and how we can find new ways to think and approach life. So the book I recommend from him is the book, let's see here, come on, Shine, The Archaic Revival. My good friend Jens actually loaned me this, and I haven't given it back. Sorry, Jens. But this is an incredible book. It's a series of his interviews, but it really does a great job distilling down his thinking and his very unique way of speaking. It's very colorful, very fascinating to dig in on him. The last book I'm going to recommend for folks is a little more academic, a little more cerebral, but it does a really wonderful job of blending spirituality and psychology into one kind of tone. And that book is Transformations of Consciousness. And Ken Wilber is the lead author on this, but it's also Jack Engler and Daniel Brown. What this book is a comparative exploration of the great insight and contemplative traditions of history, alongside a Western psychological view of our inner space. So you kind of get a dual, a two-handed look at things like enlightenment, things like nirvana, things like samadhi, and all these different wonderful things that you can dig in on within your own mindfulness and meditative experiences. So if you're looking for something that finds a really nice balance between Western rational thought, psychology, and also New Age spirituality, and as well as ancient contemplative traditions, this is the book. This is the biggie right here. So there's more books, but those are the ones I would tell folks to look at first. I know this is a longer video than I usually do, but I hope that answers folks' questions.